Hi, this is Brian with d.i.y. Today I'm going to be working on my Samsung washing machine yet again. I've got a leak from underneath. Started out with a small drip, and from there it moved on to an all-out pour that was gradually flooding my washroom. Upon inspection, I found a tear in the washer boot that connects the drum to the door itself. So I picked one of those up on Amazon. We're going to go through the entire repair process now. From how to open up the washing machine to actually pulling off the old boot, putting on the new boot, and then closing it all back up. So we'll start out by coming over here and taking off the back. So a couple of things you're going to need. Phillips tip. It can either be a Phillips screwdriver or just a Phillips tip on your drill. If you look at my other videos, you'll actually see the video where I did the unboxing of the drill set that I'll be using. Of course, you don't have to have this set, but I found it to be very useful. So there are two screws on the back. There's one right here, and then another one over here. So two screws. Before we start, I'm going to unplug this. We're not really going to be doing anything with the electronics, aside from unplugging one cable. Always a good idea. So there's one screw, and these are kind of nubby little hex-tipped screws, or hex-headed screws, and the second screw. Alright. Now the way this top comes off, you kind of just have to muscle it off, because the way it works on the inside is this piece here is held to the piece underneath, sandwiched together by this. So this takes a little bit of force to knock it loose. You can see these notches here are what line up with the tabs on the inside to lock it in place. So let's set that off to the side. Now, you want to go ahead and pull out your dispenser tray, and you just push down on the little tab there in the back for that, and that will slide right out. Set that aside. Now this box here will have to come out before you take this panel off. If you try to take this panel off now, it will get caught on the inner lip of this box. So you want to go ahead and take this box off. And once again, Phillips screws. You have one here, and then you have another here to take that off. There's another screw that goes here that was missing from an earlier disassembly that I'll replace while I have it open. Take that one off. Take this one off. Just set those aside. Now with that done, this can be slid back and out of the way of the panel. Now this panel will lift up and lean forward. You want to be careful when you lean it forward, because there is a ribbon cable here. If you take that ribbon cable off, you press on the back part of this tab, causes the front part to lift up, and you just kind of work it loose. And that is all that holds this in place. You can set this entire panel off to the side. Alright, so before we take this top piece off, we'll actually have to disconnect the boot from the inside. So a couple of things we'll want to disconnect in here. Starting with the locking mechanism that I replaced in an earlier video. So it's just 3 screws here. And that will set that mechanism loose. Make sure you grab those screws, they don't fall out. We'll recover the mechanism on the inside. Now to take this boot off, there is a spring-loaded wire that wraps around. You can take this for a second. Just along here, you might see the spring there. I know it's kind of dark. Along that inner channel, if you look on your own unit, you'll find a wire, and then there's a spring that holds it all in place. And we're just going to pop that right off with the screwdriver. So just find a place that you can get under there. If you're replacing the boot, you really don't have to worry too much about scraping up this one. If you weren't planning on replacing the boot, you're opening it for some other reason, you want to be really careful not to punch a hole in it. You just slide it along there, and that will slip right off. Set that off to the side. And peel it right out of that channel. You'll find a couple of things inside here. You'll see that there are a number of hoses connected. There's one, there's another. We'll get a better view of those later. Disconnect that all the way around. I'm going to push it inside and out of the way. Then we should be able to go ahead and take this front panel off. Triple. Just going to take off your 4 screws from the top. Just have these 2 left in place to hold it. Now you should be able to lift, pull that right off, all together as one unit with the door still in place. To work with it a little bit, you've got your drain valve down here on the bottom to get around, as well as the filter, and then your locking mechanism that we just disconnected a little bit earlier. Set this off to the side. And this here is the drain hose that I just mentioned. If you ever need to drain this tub, then you can just unplug this hose and it's a direct drain from the bottom of the tub. If you haven't cleaned out your filter in a while, that's where this is done. You just unscrew that, pull the filter right out, give it a cleaning. A lot of problems can be solved by just cleaning that filter out. So these are the hoses that you'll have to disconnect from the old boot in order to install the new one. This is pretty simple. Just a squeeze, you'll slide that back. Depending on how long this has been attached, most likely since the beginning of your ownership, it could be kind of hard to get off. So just work on, tug at it, and it should slide right off, as long as you've squeezed this clamp and slid it back out of the way. These clamps are a little counterintuitive. You might think that you would screw down on it, tighten it, in order to tighten the clamp, but it actually goes the opposite way. The more you unscrew this, the tighter the clamp gets. So you'll actually want to take your screwdriver or your drill and screw this down tighter. As you screw this down, you can see it draws the clamp up, loosening that hose. So slide that back out of the way, and that'll pop right off. And finally, just to finish off, 3 different types of clamps. You have one here that you would use your pliers, squeeze down, slide back, and then simply pull it off, just like the other. This here, as far as I can tell, serves no purpose aside from holding this piece in place and keeping it from rotate. Nothing has to connect onto it, nothing slides over it, it's not going to leak anything. It just exists to hold this from rotating back and forth. So those are the 3 hoses that you're going to have to disconnect. Now, before taking this off, you'll want to go ahead and pull off your counterweights. There's a big counterweight here on the top and then another one on the bottom. You can pull this out before doing that, but there's no way that you're going to be able to put it back on and seat it properly with these weights in the way. So we're going to go ahead and get those weights out of the way first. Now you can do it a couple of ways. I like to use a nut driver, or like I have here, just an adapter along with a 1/2 inch socket. If you don't have that, then just a 1/2 inch socket and a socket wrench will do the job just fine. Just fit right over it. I like using an impact driver because these can be pretty well rusted on there, or just held on by years of buildup. You have a second nut right there. There to it, you're gonna have to pull it down, get it loosened up. You have a stud that holds this in place right here. It's just a plastic stud. Nothing goes onto it, it's just there to keep it from sliding around. So as you pull this last one out, make sure you have a hand over it so it doesn't fall off on your knee, because they are pretty heavy. Slide that off. Carefully bring it down and set that out of the way. Remove that. We'll take the bottom one off the same way. Get that seated. Drive that right off. One. We'll take this one off. Two. We have one more right here. Once again, kind of keep a hand under it so it doesn't go anywhere. And that's three. Pull this off and set that out of the way. All right, so now we're finally down to the piece that we actually want to pull off. If you look over here to the side, you'll find another one of those interesting wire screw mounts. I don't know what they're called. But once again, we're going to tighten it down to loosen it up. It might be hard to get to, so you have to work it a little bit. As you draw it up, it releases the spring, and this just slips right off. Just fish that out from around all the hoses. I'll set that off to the side. Just like that, your old seal is set free. You can pull that off. Now, as I pull this off, I'm going to point out a couple of important features. You notice here at the top, there's a little pyramid. This lines up with a notch just beneath here. That tells you that you've got it in the right position. You want to make sure that these three hose connections are on the outside when you put the other one on. It's pretty easy to get confused on which way it goes, so just make sure those are on the outside. Aside from that, everything should line right up. On the inside, there are a number of notches that will point out as we put the other one on that line up on the inside of the basin itself to keep it from being in the wrong position. I'm just going to set that aside and grab the new one. So this is the new seal I purchased off Amazon, and if you look at the description below, you'll see the link directly to it, so you're not fishing around for the right one. So you're going to look for the notch here, and it's going to line up with this little nub underneath your triangle. So you want to line that nub up right there with the notch, and get that up over the lip. Now, hold that in place, start to work your way around, and as you can see, that will not rotate because you've got that nub seated nicely in the notch around the other side. So you just have to hold it, work it around, making sure that it seats down inside that channel. This is where, if you hadn't taken off the counterweights earlier, it would be impossible to get your hands into the right place to properly seat this seal. That's why you want to go ahead and pull those off early on. All right, once you feel that it's seated in that channel all the way around, run your fingers along to make sure that there's no bumps or anything missing. You'll go ahead and put your wire lock back in place. Slip that around there. Slide that into the channel that it fits in. Get around this spot. You're going to draw it back up. Now remember, when you put this together, this other loop goes on the back side of the head so that as you loosen this screw, it tightens. So you put that on that back side there. It's been easier to do it while it was still in the channel. It's just one of those things you kind of have to mess with until you get it right. You want to make sure that you have that in a place too, that you can actually get your drill or your screwdriver back to it to tighten it up once it's in place. Because if you have it, this piece up around here somewhere, you might not be able to get back to it. So make sure that that's in there all the way around before actually screwing it down. See, stuck on a little pyramid there on top. Just seat it all the way around. The last thing you want to do is tighten it down and then realize that it's put on there wrong somewhere. For this, it's easier if you have an extension to give you a little more reach up to it. So we're going to go ahead and pop that on. So it's easier to get. All right, now that we it's interesting. Right, bit of work around the edge. Make sure it didn't slip off somewhere. Feel it seated all the way around. Give it a tug. See that it's not coming off. And there you have it. All right, so that's one of your wire catches. We'll get to the other one here in a little bit. Now we're going to reattach to our counterweights. It doesn't matter if you go with the top or the bottom one first. You just want to make sure that you put it on there the same way that you took it off. If you look on the back, you'll probably see some scoring as it was pressed onto the unit. It tells you that you've got it positioned right. Just slide it over this piece of tubing. Being careful not to damage your door lock. And then put your 3 bolts back in. I recommend starting them by hand so you don't inadvertently strip them out. Once you can tell that they're screwing in the way they should be, then you can switch over to the power tools. That one feels a little snug, so come back and check it again before tightening it. Back this one off. And go slowly with it. Make sure that's going in the way it should before tightening it down. So that's the bottom weight, and then onto the top weight. All right, so we've got the bottom weight on. Before you attach your hoses, you want to go ahead and make sure you put in the top weight so that you're not having to try to work back behind them. So you take that. Slide your hoses out of the way. Look for this plastic nub here. Slide into that slot there. Careful you don't pinch any hoses behind it. Set it up in place. And just like with the bottom, you want to hand feed these first. Make sure that the screws are starting before you switch to the power tools. So you don't strip anything out. Last thing you want to do while making one repair is create something else that needs a repair. So that one's started, that one's started. This last one tends to be a little more difficult. You might have to apply some pressure from the left to get it to slide into place. But as with everything on here, just be patient, work with it, and you'll get to the right place. And that one gives me trouble every time I take it off. So these should go a lot smoother. And that's your weight. Now we can finally put these hoses back on. So you have the three. Get this smaller hose out of the way. Put on the larger hose. Slide this down into place. And then loosen it to tighten. Just go that one. This slips right over. And find your drain hose, which tends to fall off to the left here. Slip that over. Take a pair of pliers and get that clamp back down as far over the tube as you can. That's all back together. Now we get to put the faceplate back on. So the door and faceplate, if you look at the bottom here, you'll see a piece here and a piece here. They correspond with the slots there on the door. So you'll lift it up, you'll set it onto these three catches, being careful not to catch this back inside at your drain hose. So if you have somebody to help push that in there, or you can just set it over it and be careful as you slide it into place. If you want this to be a little easier to manage, you can take the door off before you begin and put the door back on after you're done. That isn't necessary, so if you can avoid taking apart a piece, then it's best to do that. Find your three, the hose is down out of the way, and that will just rotate up and forward. Now, watch out for your locking mechanism. As you put that back in place, I'm going to go ahead and feed that to where it belongs as well. And before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and put a screw back into this to hold it where it belongs, so that it doesn't slip down and take damage. That will keep this from going anywhere as you finish putting this in place. Now this is your rubber boot. Just pull that out of the way. Don't have to worry about getting it perfectly attached just yet. Just want to make sure that the entirety of this lip isn't being pinched anywhere before closing it up. And then you have your screws back here across the top. So the screws that go on the top, they have a little metal washer. That's something that sets them apart. And you can actually see the indentations in the metal where that washer has been crimped into it in the past. Just tighten that right down. two more. So our third, fourth and final. And it's beginning to look like a washing machine again. Alright, so we're not going to worry about any more of this until we finish getting this attached. So this is where you'll probably want to have a couple of screwdrivers or a screwdriver and a butter knife if you're going to have to pull at it from both angles. So you have your metal channel here along the inside of the door, and you have this outermost lip with the channel on top of it. So you'll want to seat that in all the way around. Being careful not to pull too much in any one place or slice the rubber against the metal frame. Just kind of gently pull it over and seat it down over that channel. While this may seem like a long process, you'll save yourself easily $200 to $300 by doing this yourself. For an hour of time, that's not a bad savings. Alright, so once you have this fully seated on, you're sure that it's setting in all the way around, so you're going to go ahead and put your wire back in. It doesn't really matter where you put it in. Just want to be sure that you can access this spring. That's really your weakest point to stretch it back up into place. So what I like to do is take a butter knife or anything flat and blunt, because you don't want to risk tearing your rubber boot, and slip that back in. Make sure you use two so you can hold it in place with one as you stretch it forward with the other. And just kind of work your way down the wire. Just like that. It's secure. Now we just put it back together. So before we put the top back on, you want to go ahead and put the two screws back into your locking mechanism here. Keep it from slipping back when you shut the door. Put one here. And the second one down here. Shut the door. Now before you put this back on, you need to go ahead and put the faceplate back on. Remember, as you put the faceplate back on, this will need to be pulled back and out of the way. Try to slip that back as far as we can. Your faceplate control panel, those are just going to set onto it, and then it'll rotate into place. You'll see a couple of notches here along the bottom. And that's exactly what those are going to slip into. So one there, there. Before you close it up, make sure you reattach your ribbon. You have a flat side over here. Put a flat side here. And the latch here. And the latch will fit right into that joint. It clips in. You rest that down. Now this, we have this plastic piece will fit inside this little slot, and you'll work it around, slide it back into the control panel faceplate assembly. There it goes. Just like that. You Now you've got it in the right place when your screw holes line back up. All right, I'll grab 3 screws for that. One. Here's your second. And the third. All right, so once you have all 3 screws back in, this is firmly in place. It's slotted into here. This won't come out anymore. Now we can go ahead and put the top cover back on. It goes back on as easily as it came off. So make sure that you have your 2 screw holes at the back. You've got these plastic bumpers. We'll sit back here. Now if you look here, you see there's a stud here, here, all the way down. That stud is the joint between the body of the washer and the plate. These holes are what holds that in place. Now this one has a little bit of a bend in the lip there, so I might have to put a little more force on it to get it to go. But line those up. And just give it a push from the back. And those will snap into place. So that's all smoothed back out. We'll put on the 2 screws in the back. And one on the other side, right over here. Last step, slide your dispenser back into place. Push the tab down so it slides back in. It should be locked in. And plug it back up. Just like that, in less than an hour, you've completed a repair that will take your washing machine from flooding your washroom, save you a couple $100 worth of repair costs, and get you back up and running. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you like, please click the like button. If you have found use in this, it would always help if you subscribe as well. Again, I'm Brian with Spacebound DIY. Thanks for watching.